This is part 2 of my danger level rankings, where I will be ranking regions based on population density, player skill level, baiting and trickery, response time, and capital ship usage. I've got 14 regions left to discuss, as well as highlighting a few of the most dangerous locations on the map and giving you a peek of some of my favorite spots for solo hunting. Let's get started. Alright, we've got a lot of regions to discuss, so let's start out by just getting right into it and going into Tribute region. This one is a little bit difficult for me to discuss because we have some conflicting groups. We have AOS, AOK, also living next to SHH, some other groups in here. You can see SOS, the new group Holy that I am not used to seeing. I see Bot5, I see VVV, just a lot of different territories owned by different groups. So for population density, I'm actually going to give this region a 1. I don't see a whole lot of people living in these zones. I feel like they own the territories for hop, skip, kind of jump areas, but I don't see them ratting in deep dead end systems out in this region at all. There isn't a whole lot of 0.8, 0.9 systems for high level ratting or mining. So it's mostly just like pass-through systems, maybe a couple of gate camp choke points in between the two alliances, but not a whole lot of population actually living through here. For pilot skill level, I'm going to rank it as a 2. It's really hard for me to go below a 2 when I do see people fitting ships the way that they're supposed to be fit. You know, it's not like they're running cannons on a railgun ship or a shield tanking something that's meant to be armor tanks. So it's pretty much just standard fits. Not a whole lot of PvP fit people because, again, there's not a whole lot of people actually living out here. Maybe they might be called in from other areas and coming in to get you, but for the most part, the people that I've engaged in Tribute have been about a level 2 skill level. For baiting and trickery, I'm actually going to bump it up a little bit to a 3, and that's simply because I know that there are a lot of gate camps in this area. Not only do the alliances have to be prepared to fend off against their adversaries that are next door, but this is one of the closest points from Lowsec into Null. So I want to say it's about 11 jumps from Jita. I'd have to go back and double check that. But because it's so close to Null, a lot of people will either autopilot through here on accident, or they're just going to be trying their luck because it's close to being able to build a new ship. So a lot of times you're going to see gate camps and people prepared to lock you down right at that borderland entry. For response time, I'd give this about a 2. I think that the fact that a lot of the people are not going to be living in this area but still able to respond to incoming hostiles means that they are pretty quick to respond. But because the main areas that they live in are going to be so far away from Tribute, I don't think the response time is going to be necessarily very strong if you happen to tackle somebody who's ratting or mining in one of these systems. And finally, for capital ship usage, I'd probably put it at a 1 as well. I don't see capital ships being used on the gate camps as entryway points into this region. There might be a few that are used on choke points from the AOA side, the AOX. Sorry, I keep saying AOX, AOK side. But for the most part, they're going to be hot drops on you, and they're not going to be specifically used for gate camps or for responding to small threats. So probably a 1 on the capital ship usage. So that's going to put the Tribute region at a 1.8 danger level score. Alright, moving on to the Innsmother region. This region is going to be predominantly owned by the Kraken Alliance. This area used to be owned by Void before the merge of Burr and Void together to form Kraken. So now it's predominantly owned by Kraken with little bits of AOA mixed in. And despite it being one of the larger regions on the list, its population density is surprisingly thick. I would probably set it at a 3. If it was a smaller region with the same amount of people, I'd probably give it a 4 because it does seem to be a high concentration of player base in this region. But because it's a little bit more spread out and there's a lot of systems in between the pockets, I'll put it at a 3 for population density. For player skill level, I've actually run into some really well fit and organized groups. I'm going to set this at a 4. The players that I have engaged in here that have been close to the pockets have been really strong and PvP fit. So you have to be very well prepared when you engage here because they're going to be ready for you and waiting for you to come. It seems like the players in this region know their hotspots. They know the spots that people are going to come and try and hunt you at, and they are very well prepared for you to show up. For baiting and trickery, I'm going to set this at a 3. For the most part, I don't think there's a whole lot of trickery going on, but I have been locked into pipes on occasion where you go down 3 or 4 systems into that 0.9 thinking that you're going to grab a battleship, and all of a sudden there's a gate camp behind you on your way out. So most of the PvE fit ships are going to be pretty well fit, but they're still going to be built for PvE, so there's not a whole lot of trickery going on there, but they will definitely lock you down and start to close the distance and trap you inside. For response time, I'm going to rank this at a 4. There's a couple of different areas in this region, and I keep mentioning this because it's so big, so there's a little bit of difference between like the eastern side and the southern side of Inother. But there are a couple of areas in this region where people will be on top of you within 30 seconds. And there have been more than one time that I've tackled a Raven Navy coming out of a logon trap, and before I even get a 4th into its shield, there's a gate camp at the system to get out. Last time I tackled a Raven Navy, there was a Chameleon and I think a Abaddon bomber waiting for me already. So surprisingly very fast on the response time. The only reason why I can't give it a 5 is because these are very specific areas and hotspots of the region, and it doesn't really go for the whole region as a whole. But in those key spots, very dangerous. For capital ship usage, I would put this region at about a 2. I don't think they rely a lot on capital ships for these bubbles, traps, or gate camps, or even responses, but I know that they're out there. So it's actually very similar to Fade or Declan, where I know that they can use them when they want to, but they tend to not respond to the solo ship with a capital ship, such as AOA likes to do. So that's going to leave Inother with a final danger rating of 3.2 out of 5. Alright, I don't really like doing this, but I am going to group up the next 2 together just because they're going to be so similar for me, or I should say I've had the most similar experiences in these 2 regions, and that's the Wicked Creek region and the Scalding Pass region. Now, both of these areas are going to be predominantly owned by Kraken Alliance, although there is some tug on the left-hand side there that I do not have a whole lot of experience passing through, and there is some NEEC on the southern side alongside AOA of Wicked Creek. For population density, I'm going to give both of these regions a 1. A lot of these systems are going to be 0.2, 0.3. Not a whole lot of people living in these systems and making a whole career out of it. They're going to be based around trade centers, pass-through junction points in between alliances, as you can see there where Kraken overlaps AOA now. And up in Scalding Pass, there's going to be a lot of systems that lead into some unclaimed nullsec systems that lead into lowsec. So it's mostly like an introduction into nullsec. If you want to pass through here, you might catch some hauling ships on the pass-through systems right at the borderlands. But from my experience, I don't see a lot of people ratting or mining in these areas. As for the pilot skill level, the ones that I think I have engaged, and I say think because I went back through all of my footage from my other videos trying to find fights in Scalding Pass or Wicked Creek, and I couldn't find any. I don't know if I just missed it or not, but from what I remember in my experience traveling through here, I'd say pilot skill level is at about a 2. Most of the time you're going to see the things that I have caught would be hauling ships that are just AFK hauling through systems to get into different areas of nullsec in between trade centers, or coming from lowsec into null. So I haven't really caught a whole lot of ratting or mining ships out here to raid anything higher than a 2. For baiting and trickery, I'd probably set it at a 1. I think there's a couple of systems down there in AOA in Wicked Creek where they have some gate camps set up, but there's nobody stopping you from going from southern Wicked Creek all the way up into Scalding Pass. There's just not a lot of gate camps. There's not a lot of people that are going to try and trap you and hunt you down. So I'll give it a 1 for that. And similarly, I have to rate it a 1 on response time as well. The ships that I have caught, which again, just pretty much hauling ships, nobody's going to be able to respond in time to that because there's they're too fragile to respond to. So I'll have to give it a 1 for that. Capital ship usage, I have to set it at a 1 as well. A lot of this might be just my inexperience with these two regions, but from what I feel looking at the map, I don't remember a whole lot of activity in these areas. So the overall score might be pretty low, but that might not actually be indicative of what's going on with these regions, especially with the area where the Tug Alliance is, because I don't remember having any experience fighting any of them. So final score for Wicked Creek and Scalding Pass both is going to be a 1.2 out of 5, although I strongly recommend experiencing it for yourself, just because I don't have a whole lot to go by passing through these two regions. Moving a little bit south, we are going to be talking about the DEDroid region. A majority of this is owned by the AOA Alliance, along with a little bit of NEEC over there on the left, and a new group, SOS, which I'm not 100% familiar with. This region is kind of an untraditional shape where it's like very narrow. It goes from the far right to the far left, and it's like right below Wicked Creek, but it's kind of squished into straight lines, a lot of straight lines. This is going to result in a lot of pass-through systems with long warp times and a lot of junction points in between high traffic areas. So on the far right, you'll probably see like an AOA system at a 0.9, and it'll have a long pathway all the way over into like an NEEC system with like a 0.5 or something rating. For population density, I would give this area about a 2. I don't think it's super empty, but for the most part, I would expect to see more players than I do. I see a lot of 0.5, 0.6 security systems, so a lot of times when I'm traveling through there, I expect there to be a lot of raiders and miners, but for some reason, I don't end up running into a lot of players. For pilot skill level, I'll also give it a 2, just because the players that I do run into are either hauling things and not paying attention, or you'll get what a lot of people like to call the AOA special, which is a fiend on a gate camp trying to get you engaged just long enough for them to drop a capital on you. Which kind of leads into the baiting and trickery, which I am going to give the score a little bit higher just because of those gate camps, those traps where they try to get you engaged on one side of the gate and then come through on the other side, or warp in with a really big ship. But other than those traps, I don't see a whole lot of trickery going on with their PvE ratting players. For response time, I'll give this area a 2. They're not incredibly slow at responding, but I don't see a whole lot of like groups coming to try and get you or take you out. It'll usually be 1 or 2 players that might be trying to defend one of their hauling ships. Maybe you catch an orca on one of those pass-through systems, and so one person will come and try and save them, but you won't see huge groups coming to try and respond. And for capital ship usage, I'll bump it up a little bit to a 3, just because most of the time when I do engage a ship on a gate, it's because they have a capital ship waiting in the back. So that's going to give the DEDroid region a 2.4 out of 5. That's mostly because of the capital ship usage that I see going on down there, but other than that, the scores are a little bit lower on the other categories. Okay, let's move over to the MNC region. This one is predominantly owned by AOA and NEEC. I want to say mostly owned by NEEC. A lot of the systems are going to be 0.2, 0.3 with a couple of 0.6s in a few triangle pipes that I like to call them. For population density, I'm going to give this area a 3. I thought about giving it a 2, but then I remembered all the times that I ran circles around these little triangles over here, and a lot of people would come out of the woodwork. So I know I want to set it at a 3 for population density. For player skill level, I'm going to set it at a 2. You shouldn't see anything super surprising jump out at you. You'll get the normal cruisers that will come and try and chase you, a few frigates, but for the most part, you won't see high-end roaming groups trying to take you out if you enter this region. For baiting and trickery, I'm going to set it at a 2. I don't remember a whole lot of gate camps coming through here, even though they do have those really long pipes coming from the other areas of nullsec. And most of the time, if you catch a ship that's ratting or mining, they're going to be standard PvE fit. For response time, I'm going to set this region at a 2 as well. I usually will see, again, maybe 1 or 2 players that will come and try and engage you if you happen to enter a populated system or tackle something. But for the most part, has been chasing me down or been trying to stop me from going from one end of the region to the other. And as for capital ship usage, I'm going to set it as a 1. I don't see a whole lot of capital ships being used out here. I don't know if they're just not using them at the right times that I'm online, but for the most part, maybe it has something to do with the fact that they don't have traditional pocket systems. Usually you'll have like 1 or 2 systems that are 0.8, 0.9, like right in a row at a dead end. But there's a lot of, like I said earlier, triangles out here of like groups of systems. So you'll see like a 0.6, 0.7, and a 0.5 all in like a little triangle. But you won't really see those deep pipes that offer the security to the bigger capital ships. That'll put MNC's final danger rating at a 2 out of 5. And before we get a little bit too far south, let's jump back up to the Providence region. This region is currently owned by the SNEK Alliance, as well as some USSR. It was formerly called the Nova Alliance, and I know this because I spent a lot of time out here looking for players. This is a larger region, but because there's so many 0.1 security systems, there's not a whole lot of population density. So I'll rate population density at a 1. You can enter from low-sec up there in the north, and it's not until you get way down to the bottom of the region where you find a couple 0.2 or 0.3 systems. So it's actually kind of surprising how many low security systems are in this region. For player skill level, I'm going to give it a 2. I have engaged some good groups where they would come in PvP fit and ready, but I have to put it a little bit on the low end, and I can't go up to a 3 just because the ones that I have engaged have just been in cruisers and standard fit ships. So nothing super high end that's gonna blow you away or be really dangerous to run into. For baiting and trickery, I'm actually surprised that there's not more gate camps coming into this region from low-sec. From the times that I've experienced, I've expected there to be a gate camp right there on the border, because usually coming from low-sec into null is a very popular way to put a gate camp and bait people into a bad situation. But I'm surprised that they're not actually there waiting for me. So I'll have to give baiting and trickery a 2 on this scale. There are some good spots that you can set up gate camps, so they might just not be at the times in which I'm online. For response time, I'm going to give this region a 1. From the times that I have tackled ships, not a lot of people have come, and I've actually been in systems so long that I started running an Inquisitor in order to get people to come and try and take me out. And it wasn't until I think I was on wave 3 in which somebody finally showed up to try and engage me. So maybe I'm seeing this wrong, but because there's so many 0.1 systems out there, I'm not really sure what people are doing in this region in general. Most of the time you're going to see those really low security systems, 0.8, 0.9, in order to get those high tier loot, get those really valuable ores for mining. And I honestly, I just don't see those systems in this region. So I don't know what people do in Providence. And so for capital ship usage, I also have to give it a 1. I don't think I see a lot of fleet anomalies spawning. I don't see a lot of capital ships being used or responding to me in an aggressive manner, and I don't see capital ships being used on gate camps when entering and exiting this system. So I'll give it a 1 for that. So that will leave Providence with a final score of 1.4 out of 5 danger level. Dropping down one region, we're going into the Catch region, and this one is kind of weirdly shaped. We've got NEEC up here kind of wrapping around Provi with an NPC system up there, and then it kind of comes down here into the south and becomes Meow on the Alliance side. Now it has a really weird shape to it just because of that, backwards L, or I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And because of the 2 different alliances, it's going to be different response times, different ratings for the most part. But judging this by a region as a whole, there are some good systems and pockets of players that are present. For population density, I'm actually going to set it at a 3. Once you find those pockets with 0.7, 0.8 systems, there's going to be a high density of population in there. For pilot skill level, I'm actually going to rate this at a 3, and that's because the players who are going to respond to you and are going to engage you in PvP are going to be well equipped to do so. These are players who have been living in low-end security systems for a long time. They know the area, they know their way around, and they know the ship that they're going to be taking out to try and take you out. For baiting and trickery, I'm going to give it a 2. There's not a whole lot of trickery going on with ratting ships. There's nobody going to be using tracking disruptors, neutralizers when you go to try to engage them and tackle them. And there's not going to be a whole lot of gate camps going on just because of the way that the region is laid out. It's not conducive to running gate camps or tricks. Also, because a lot of their high-end systems where people are concentrated are not going to be set up in long pipes, they're going to be more triangles. You're not going to get blocked in if you engage something with a gate camp or a bubble coming up behind you, like we discussed in some of the other alliance groupings. For response time, I'm going to set it at a 2. A lot of that has to do with the fact that you have 2 different alliances owning this region as a whole, so they're not going to be as communicative with each other. If you happen to be engaging things up in the NEE side and then move down into Meow, they're not going to be reporting your activity as much. But also I want to add to the fact that a lot of the systems on the main line there with Meow are just a straight line from far right to far left, or either way you're going, except for the ones that drop down a little bit more south. Those are going to be their pockets. So if you don't enter the pockets and kind of poke the beehive, you're not going to get a huge amount of response time. So I'll set that at a 2 for a region. In regards to capital ship usage, I would say that they're more used in the Meow side than the NEEC side, predominantly because the systems are going to be a lower security level and there's kind of more opportunities to use them because of the pass-through junctions in between the 2 regions that this region has to lie in between. So I'll set capital ship usage at a 2. I don't think I've seen a whole lot going on in this area, but I know that they kind of exist and they're in the peripheral background waiting to be used. And that's also mostly based on the fact that I know that the pilot's skill level out here is a little bit higher as well, so I know that they have those high-end ships just waiting. So that all adds up to catch being a 2.4 out of 5 on the danger level. And we are onto the Tenerifis region. This is one that I've been waiting to talk about for this whole video. So spoilers for the end when I start talking about my favorite spots to hunt. This is one of my favorite regions to hunt in. For population density, I'm going to give this region a 2 out of 5. A lot of the systems on the lower right-hand side of the region are going to be kind of empty pass-through, so you won't see a lot of players there. But once you get into the heart of the region, right there where you see that red streak going down the middle, that's when you're going to see the bulk of players. And I've entered systems where there's been 20 plus players at once hitting one of those new mining belts, or all grouped up in a fleet with, orcas and rorquals and capital ships and stuff. There seems to be a lot of players here, and they kind of concentrate all on the same system. So you'll go 2 or 3 systems where you won't see anybody and you'll think it'll be kind of empty, and all of a sudden, boom, there's 20 people right there waiting for you in a popular area. I did want to mention before I forget that this region is owned predominantly by AOA, but it also used to belong partially to EXDS. I don't know how to say that. I want to say Exodus. I think that they broke apart or reformed of some kind, and they seem to have joined AOA in the recent couple of weeks, but that used to be EXDS was the prime area in which I used to hunt in. And the reason for that is that the player skill level that I encountered out there is a 1 out of 5. I have not found more salty players in any other region of the game than in Tenerifis. I have not found more AFK ratters than anywhere else in the game than in Tenerifis, and I have not found the combination of salty AI ratters in any other region than Tenerifis. It is quite amazing to see the people that send me DMs when I kill them in their AFK orca. For baiting and trickery, if I could give this region a 0, I would, but it only goes down to a 1, so I'm going to put them at a 1. I don't see gate camps hardly anywhere. I can go from an NPC station all the way up to the top of the region without usually seeing any players, and I'll just pass right by systems with 20 players in it and nobody stops me. Which kind of leads me into the response time, which I'm also going to give them a 1 for response time. There's been so many times where I've tackled a battleship in a system that has 7 players in it and nobody came. Even after I waited and looted and then double scanned to check the gate to see if anybody was waiting for me, nobody showed up. So I don't know if it's a lack of communication or what, but response time is a 1 for this region. And as far as capital ship usage goes, I'm also going to put it at a 1. I have seen a Rorqual, I have seen capital ships out here, but they are almost exclusively running PvE content, and they will not be chasing you, and they will not be with a fiend on a bubble in this region. Not down here, at least. That's going to give Tenerifis a final score of 1.2 danger level out of 5. Sliding over to the Impass region, I'm going to go over this really quick, and I'm actually not going to be able to give this region a ranking. I know I said I was going to do every region in nullsec, but I just can't do a ranking for this region. Part of it is, okay, I'll be honest, I'm scared to death of Spy. This is a really small region with only a few groups of controlling systems out here, some Kraken, and some flying circus, also known as Spy or the Spanish Inquisition, which I'm kind of a huge fan of. But let's just say that when I decided to go from the region north of Impasse to the region south of Impasse, I take the long way around. I think I traveled through here one time and there wasn't a whole lot of players. One person chased me, but it was at like 2 o'clock in the morning US time, so I can't really be a good judge of Impasse. I can, however, talk about the Omist region. This is in the far southeast of the entire map. It is very secluded and is predominantly owned by AOA with a little bit of NEEC mixed together. They kind of intermingle in a lot of areas of the map. For population density, I'm going to give it a 2. I kind of surprisingly thought it was going to be about a 1, but you'll be pleasantly surprised to find as many players as you do out in this small region. They won't necessarily be in large groups, so you might run into systems of just 2 or 3 players, but they are going to be active players. They're not going to be necessarily botting or AI ratting out here, but they are going to be active players. It's just not super populated, maybe because it's so secluded from the rest of the map. As far as player skill level, I'll give it a 2. I don't really want to drop down to a 1 just because players I have engaged have been pretty well equipped. I mean, they know roughly how to play the game. It's not like they're brand new or anything like that, and they're not running crazy fits. It's just nothing really special that I've run into. For baiting and trickery, I'll put it at a 1. There's not a whole lot going on out here other than ratting and mining. There's not going to be people running gate camps. It's just so far off the beaten path that people don't expect anybody to be passing through. I don't know if they have a lot of hunters that come through or a lot of groups that hunt way out here in deep null, but I think that they aren't used to having people come through, so they don't really bait, gate camp, or trick or expect anybody to come through to try and tackle them. For response time, I'll put it at a 1 as well. Usually if you find a player that you can tackle, you pretty much have your way with that player. You're not going to get a whole bunch of add-ons like you will in the other AOA owned regions up north. This is a very quiet region of the game. And as far as capital ship usage goes, I'll put it down as a 1 as well. I don't see a whole lot of capital ships going out here. It's just such a small, little, quiet pocket of nullsec. It's actually quite pleasant when I start to think about it. Part of the reason, again, is that it's just so tucked away in the corner and away from the other hotspots of the map that I don't think they get a whole lot of fleets coming through and engagements. And if they do, they get plenty of warning from the other areas of AOA that are more on the inland side. That'll put the Omist region at a 1.4 out of 5. Moving a little west into the Phaethobolus region, this is going to be kind of a weird one because it's owned by 2 different groups. So the northern part of this region is owned by AOA, and the southern part is owned by Kraken, or also known as Ken, which is a subset of Kraken that used to be called Burr. So it's one of the reasons why I separated my categories into regions and not alliances is because of this group right here, because the personalities and the players that are going to be down here in this version of Kraken are going to be very different from the personalities that you find up north in that version of the Alliance Kraken. For population density as a whole region, I'm going to give it a 3. I would say that down in the purple areas that you see there, it's more of a 4. You'll find a lot more people in that area, and then the AoE space is a little bit more pass-through systems up above. For player skill level, however, I'm actually going to mark this area down as a 5. And I wouldn't necessarily give them a 5 because of the AoE space up there. I kind of feel like this is 2 different regions in one, but the players that are down here in this Ken Alliance area are some of the hardest ones that I've ever fought. They are very well equipped. They use faction ships. They use the right ship to fight you. And this is one of the areas, like when I pass from Omis over there, nice and casual, down over here into Faith of Bolus on that lower warp path there, I'm usually in for a run for my money as soon as I enter that area. For baiting and trickery, I'm including gate camps in this, and so I have to give this a 4. That lower end is such a great spot for gate camps because it connects one region on the far right of the map to another region on the far left, that there's almost always a gate camp right there on the bottom, on that straight line that I run into. It also allows them to protect the middle part of their region from anything that comes down below. So they have a lot of protection on their borders with this region, and it makes baiting and trickery a little bit easy. So oftentimes even I'll see a battleship that's just waiting on a gate for me to try and fight it, and as soon as I engage, then I know they're bringing their capital from the other side. Response time in this region is actually really good as well. I'm going to give them a 4 on response time. It's usually hard for me to tackle any ship without somebody coming on their way. I've tackled a Rorqual one time. Somebody showed up pretty quick. I tackled a couple battleships and then just was immediately met with a bubble in a gate camp. So response time is really good in this area. Like, people are ready and willing to engage in PvP activity. And as far as capital ship usage goes, I'll put it at about a 3. I don't think they're super aggressive with their capitals, but they are definitely willing to drop them and ready to drop them into engagements. So you will see them more often than other groups might drop them. But I don't think they're going to bring them as much for a solo roamer unless they kind of know your name. Like if I happen to pass through, I have a sneaking suspicion they'll be like, yeah, drop a cap on his ass. So that'll put the final danger level score at a 3.6 for the Faith of Bolus region. Speaking of regions owned by Ken, this one is going to be split a little bit in half. So in the upper right hand side here we have Blop in Esoteria, and in the lower half side of Esoteria we have Ken, just like we had in Faith of Bolus. So a lot of the same players and play styles down here in this Ken side as we just talked about in Faith of Bolus. For player density, I'm going to give this a ranking of 4. There is a lot of players in these systems and a lot of good systems to engage players in. A lot of people playing actively and engaging in the game, so you should be finding somebody in every other system that you pass through. I think the only thing that prevents it from being a 5 out of 5 like Declan was is the size, because this one's a little larger, a little more spread out, and 2 different groups in it. I can't give it a 5, but I'll give it a 4 for population density. As for player skill level, I have to give it a 5 out of 5. Very similar to Faith of Bolus, these players are ready, willing, and hoping to engage in PvP when you show up. They will be PvP fit even if they are ratting. Let's keep in mind, this is a former pirate alliance. These guys knew what they were doing when they were Burr, and they were definitely PvP hungry. So if you're going to be coming in here looking for player engagements, they're going to be looking for it as well. For the baiting and trickery category, I'm going to give this a 5 out of 5 as well. There is no other region in the game in which I have experienced battleships ratting specifically to engage in PvP. They literally have sat there and waited for me to come in, and then just kind of baited me into engaging and feeling like I was safe, and then all of a sudden I got 4 webs on me and I'm dead. So it's just, I feel like the players out here are on a different level of the game. Like, I might be passing through and thinking that I can engage this faction ship who happens to be autopiloting from system to system, when in actually he's not autopiloting, he's pretending to autopilot and waiting for me to engage him so he can call 4 of his buddies. For response time, I'm going to give this an area of 4 out of 5. Very strong on the response time, especially if you enter a populated system. They will see you and take note, and they are very aggressive in trying to engage you when you enter their home. As far as capital ship usage, I can't comment a lot on the group that is called Blop up in the north of this region, but I know that the Ken group usually doesn't use capital ships as much, although they will be on gate camps occasionally, and they will occasionally bring them through to try and trap you. I would put it down at about a 3. Most of the time they're going to respond with cruisers, battle cruisers, or battleships. That's going to put the final score for Esoteria at 4.2 out of 5, which ties them for the top of the leaderboard on my overall rankings list. This area is tough, and these players are really good. You should be very careful when coming through Esoteria. Can you hear it? My voice is almost gone, but it's okay. We're on the last region of nullsec here. On the list, we have Paragon Soul. This region is comprised of 2 different alliances. You have Ken, also known as Kraken, and Only Alliance on the left-hand side here. 2 different kind of groups, but with similar play styles. For player density, I'll put Paragon Soul at a 3 out of 5. They're usually very heavily in the deep areas of Paragon Soul, like on the far left-hand there, or around trade centers. But there are some pass-through systems where you can kind of maneuver your way and log out safely if you are being chased. For player skill level, I'm going to put Paragon Soul at a 4 out of 5. I've been challenged a few times here. This is when people will DM me and just say, hey, I want to fight you. And I don't get that a lot in a lot of other systems. I have gotten it in the past. I'm not saying I don't get it in other regions, but Paragon Soul seems to have a lot of players who will directly DM you and say, hey, fight 1v1 at the sun. And they aren't going to be tricking you and bringing a capital ship. They generally are looking for that cruiser versus cruiser, battleship versus battleship type of fight. For baiting and trickery, I'll put it at a 2. They do have a tendency to try and get you to engage on a gate to bring another ship on the other side, but they're not going to go through and be ratting with things that are unexpected like we just talked about in Esoteria. They're going to be pretty much, just engaging in the game as it goes. For response time, I'm going to give it a little bit lower. From my experience, maybe it's just my playtime, but I'm going to set it at a 2. And that's, from the ships that I have tackled, I haven't seen a huge response or lockdown of the area down deep in Paragon Soul. And finally, for capital ship usage, I'm going to rate it at a 1 out of 5. I don't see a whole lot of capital ships going on out here. That's not necessarily a bad thing. For me personally, I like a region that's not afraid to use regular sized ships in their fights. And it feels like the people in the Only group down deep in Paragon Soul, they like to use regular sized ships. Like I said, cruisers, battleships, and some faction frigates. They're not afraid to fly those frigates as well. So that will set our final region, Paragon Soul, at a 2.4 out of 5. All right, we did it. So every region has been ranked. Let's go over the leaderboards now and see where we ended up. Top 2 spots are going to go to Declan and Esoteria at a 4.2. Null is at a 3.8. Faith of Bolus at a 3.6. We've got Innsmother and Fountain both sitting at a 3.2. Fade at a 3. Cloud Ring 2.6. And Cash, Catch, Paragon Soul, and DEDroid all coming in at 2.4 rating. For the bottom half of the ranking list, we have MNC at a 2, Delve and Tribute at a 1.8, Quirius and Branch at 1.6, and then Period, Basis, Pureblind, Providence, and Omist at 1.4, and our bottom contenders Veil of the Silent, Geminate, Scalding Pass, Wicked Creek, and Tenerife at a 1.2. And that is my complete list of danger rankings based on a solo PvPer coming through these regions. So use that as you will. Use it as a hunter, use it as an alliance, see where you want to rank, and maybe if you want to improve on some areas, maybe you can use this guide, this video to help you out. So before I end the video, I do want to highlight something that I promised I was going to talk about, which is 3 areas of the game which I find the most dangerous, and then 3 areas that I like to hunt in the most. So starting with the first 3 that I find really dangerous, I'm going to be talking about this area of Tico space that involves B1 all the way down to Deborn. This is a really dangerous pocket in a nice straight line in which you're going to run into some really strong players and response times. B1 is almost always camped with a bubble and a super. If you go down into that pipe, you're probably going to run into some kind of a carrier or super that is guarding the heavy deborn mining fleets that I've seen out there. And I know that every time I go down this pipe, it's pretty much a one-way trip. Unless I have a filament and then I can get the hell out. But I don't go down this pipe without an ability to filament out. The second area is going to be up in Declan, and this is what I like to refer to as the Iron Triangle. I have had absolutely zero success getting one single kill mail up here, and every single time I come up, I get trapped and either run off or destroyed. At least 2 of these systems is going to have about 20 players in it, even at off times, and it's just really hard to tackle anything and kill it before a response comes. They're very quick, and they like to jump on you. They like the aggressive play style of PvP up here too. So if you fancy yourself a challenge of trying to get a rare kill mail, go over here to the Iron Triangle of Declan and give it a shot. I can't do it. And another dangerous hotspot for me has always been up here in null. The AOS systems that are over here on the top left of the screen are going to be very good systems for finding radders and miners and people playing, but every time I enter there, if I don't kill a ship and then filament out, trying to come back down this pipe and move my way over to the right has ended up in death almost every single time. Usually trapped by a bubble in a capital, or a couple fleets will come through and try and take me out. It doesn't matter if I'm a solo player or not, they don't want me up in that territory. On the flip side of those danger areas, I'm going to talk about 3 places that I love to hunt the absolute most, and it's actually for different reasons for each of them. The first place I like to go is actually these 3 systems that you see almost in the middle of the screen. They're owned by Hack and LASD of the AOA and NEEC Alliance, formerly EXSD, I think Exodus, and I usually love coming through here. Not only is there almost always players ratting and mining and doing something, but their response time for me has been really low. They don't like to chase when I come through, and there's always a target for me to try and tackle, even if they're AI ratting or AI mining or something. And add on top of the fact that this is where I've obtained the most salt of any DMs in the game so far, has been the players and kills that I've gotten in those 3 systems. Another spot I like to hunt in is up here in Branch with VVV. These systems that are near a NPC system are almost always have AFK miners, people who are not paying attention, and not a lot of people who are going to chase me out of here. There's always targets for me to find up here, and when I build a new ship or put an idea together, I always like to run it up here and test it out on unwilling victims. And the last area that I actually like to hunt in is down in Paragon Soul with the Only Alliance, not because it's an easy area to hunt. These players are actually pretty well skilled for PvP. The reason why I like hunting down here is that they don't really drop capitals. They like to fight fairly, they like to fight in even teams, and it's not like they're going to try and swarm you. Like, I want to say this is the most honorable PvP that I've had in the game so far, where people will directly challenge me to 1 versus 1 and honor those duels. So I actually like fighting down here in this group for that reason. And that about does it for this video. I hope you enjoyed my rankings. Whether you agree with them or not, go ahead and leave a comment down below. We can talk about it. Everybody's experience is going to differ based on playtime, personal ship usage, etc. But hopefully you gain something from my knowledge and it can help you in your solo PvP or defending from against solo PvPers in the future. Until then, fly safe and have fun.